Hello and welcome to episode 181 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, back in Chicago, and here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Welcome back and congratulations on completing your ridiculous flight itinerary with
Thank you, sir.
No issues whatsoever. And an upgrade.
Yeah, all of the issues that arose actually ended up working in my favor, even though there were some delays. Like I said, both flights on the way there were delayed, similar amount of time. So those didn't end up costing me much. On the way home, made it up to Stockholm after we recorded the podcast, had a lovely evening in Stockholm, full moon rising and very beautiful stuff. Made it home on Saturday, connected through New York, waved as I landed, Jason. I hope you saw me going. And then because of the random assortment of SkyTeam flying that I've ended up doing over the past year, I have now achieved what I had never set out to achieve, because this trip was the first time I'd ever flown Delta, let alone the rest of SkyTeam.
Which I find super difficult to believe. I mean, I know Delta's not a hub carrier in Chicago in any way, but come on, really? I've flown United a bunch, and they don't have a hub in New York, and I ought to confirm that again, that Newark is not New York.
Newark is not New York anymore. That's right. I went back after I said, because I believe that. And so I was like, okay, let's make sure I'm not mistaken. And I can't find any time. And there were a couple times that I've flown through Detroit. So I was like, maybe I flew Delta there. I've flown up to Minneapolis. No, both of those times were pre-merger Northwest flights.
Well, you didn't get Delta's best aircraft. We know that for sure. So you'll have to come back another time and try something a little better.
Yeah, I'm going to try anything with a working screen. So on the way out, the screens needed to be reset a bunch of times. On the way back on the 767, it was a different 767, but on the way back, my screen got stuck on the moving map, which ended up being fine.
Not the worst thing to get stuck on.
At least it wasn't stuck on something I didn't like. But no, good flights. And I got the flight from New York to Chicago was empty, so I got an upgrade on my E175, which is, I'm not going to look any horses of gifting in the mouth, and I will take what I can get and say thank you very much. Made it home, did not get COVID on the trip.
Fantastic.
All things considered, a very well-traveled exercise. And I made it home just in time to prepare for what we expected would be a very well-tracked flight. I'm referring to the carriage of Queen Elizabeth II's coffin from Edinburgh Airport down to RAF Nordholt. And it was well-tracked, but much, much more well-tracked than we thought it would be. So beginning of August, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, United States House of Representatives, flies from Kuala Lumpur to Taipei. That flight ends up being, I think it was like almost 8 hours, and ends up being tracked by 2.2 million people. At the peak, there were 700 and some odd thousand people following it, 708,000 people following, I think. So we figured, okay, it's going to be a little bit more than that, but how much more we didn't know. So we prepared the waiting room that we kind of talked about before, and that helps kind of meter traffic, because the issue with traffic and platform stability isn't necessarily the number of people. It's the concurrency of the number of clicks. So when the platform gets hammered, it's basically like a real live DDoS, and dealing with all of that flood of people wanting to track something creates problems. The problem here was that it wasn't a few 100,000. It was 6 million people.
That's a lot of people. At one point when I had the actual website loaded up, I think it topped out at like 520,000 concurrent people watching the flight before it kind of stopped.
That was the transponder turned on, and we went...
Yeah, that was before it even took off.
Yeah. The transponder turned on. So to put things into perspective, there were nearly 200,000 people tracking a Turkish Airlines A321 that was just sitting on the ground in Edinburgh.
That's important.
It happened to be in the right place at the right time. So 6 million, within 1 minute of the transponder becoming active, 6 million people tried to follow that particular flight. About 600,000 were successful before the site said, this isn't really going to work. So we had to implement more traffic calming measures, which I know is unfortunate. I want to have some of our infrastructure team on the podcast to kind of explain what we're doing, because they're really, really, really excited about some of the things that we're working on in the next, well, starting a few months ago and kind of working through the next few months to really I don't want to say reimagine, but revamp the entire infrastructure that powers and sustains Flight Radar 24 so that things like this are a thing of the past, where we have to implement traffic calming measures.
You tried with the YouTube live stream, which ran into the same problem as any other user. So you tried, you all did your best, but this is one of those situations where you can't test for it. You can't reasonably expect it to happen anytime in the near future. Just websites, any websites, whether you're Flight Radar 24 or Amazon, isn't built to handle a spike in traffic like that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things is all of this stuff is live, so there's nothing to cache. So we run into the problem of we have to serve everything as it's happening, which becomes, I mean, we cache as much as we can, obviously, like the information about that particular aircraft or the photo from jet photos that's shown as much as we can, but there's still a lot of things that just are just live data. So in the end, 5 million total people, 4.79 million on the website, and then another nearly 300,000 on the YouTube live stream, were able to follow the flight. If you were one of the people that was not able to follow the flight, I'm deeply and truly sorry. And rest assured that we are moving towards a solution that will allow a significant increase in traffic, even compared to what we saw last week. Though for the life of me, I don't want to think about what type of flight would lead to more traffic than that.
This wasn't even supposed to happen. I think the Queen's
she
wishes
was
were to be transported by train. Her wishes were to be transported by train. And just like here in the US, where Biden wanted to go to his inauguration by Amtrak, because of course the powers that be that protect and plan these things said, no, that's not safe enough. We'll put you in an airplane and people can watch that instead.
Yeah,
I know. The one time you don't want something to be an airplane, it should have been a train. Like so many other flights that should be a train, this was one of them.
This is really a harbinger for a larger conversation. But so 5 million people, 6 million people tried in the first minute, 5 million people total because of the traffic calming measures that we had to implement. So the total would have been much higher had the platform been able to support additional traffic more than it was already the increase we already saw. So it's the most tracked flight of all time. And hopefully we don't see anything like that for a while we implement all of these changes that I'm really excited about and our infrastructure team's really excited about. So
how many people were watching your Delta E-175 flight? Probably less than that, right?
A few less. It was like 130,000. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
When I travel, people
move the decimal point a few places.
1.3. 1.3 people were following. So let's leave that at that. But that was her final flight. The RAF did a wonderful job, and it is now the most tracked flight on Flight Radar 24 of all time. If you want to watch a replay of the flight, you can click the link in the show notes. Now, something that we could also have not expected just a short time ago. We briefly mentioned it a couple weeks ago when John Ostrower broke the news, and then both Emirates and United scrambled to put something out as by way of a teaser to not confirm it, but kind of confirm it. Today, the announcement that United and Emirates are entering into a codeshare agreement. United is restarting service to Dubai. They're now buddy-buddy.
Yeah, code share and interline agreement. It struck me as a little odd. This announcement today was at Dulles, but United is actually launching its nonstop flight to Dubai from Newark, which is, I don't know why they decided to do that from Dulles. Really no idea why, but this starts up in March.
Doesn't Emirates fly to Dulles?
I mean, they fly to Newark too.
Do they?
They do. Or they used to. I'm pretty sure they do. It's that one-stop flight from Athens, I think.
You just answered your own question.
How did I answer?
They don't want to announce it at the Fifth Freedom Airport.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? Didn't really think of that. That flight does kind of represent the very thing United, Delta, and American were fighting against for
Yeah.
years. So, yeah, not that anyone other than you, me, or probably Gavin are thinking that deeply about the prop plane used for this.
Yeah.
Also, not great that they flew a plane like 7,000 miles just to be a background image at the
Well, did
hangar,
they
but
put passengers on it?
I don't think so. Either way, whatever. It starts up in March 2023, Newark to Dubai nonstop. Really weird flight timing. It has like 6 hours on the ground in Dubai. Not sure what that is about. But Emirates passengers will be able to connect on to United flights in, I think it's Houston, San Francisco, and Chicago. And then Emirates passengers, both airlines will have an interline agreement at 8 other U.S. airports served by Emirates: Boston, Dallas, L.A., Miami, JFK, Orlando, Seattle, and Washington, D.C. So I think that's all of Emirates' gateways in the U.S. So not quite a partnership. They won't. United passengers won't earn mileage plus points on Emirates flights just yet, but you will get some perks. I think like access to the Emirates Lounge in Dubai if you're flying in a United premium cabin, which is nice.
Sounds fine.
Yeah, but this is kind of the next step towards normalization of airline relations between the U.S. and the Middle East. So we had American and Qatar not too long ago go all buddy-buddy, with American launching a flight to Doha from JFK. Now we have United getting buddy-buddy with Emirates, launching a flight again from New York/Newark to Dubai. And all that's left is Delta. I think it is extremely unlikely we will see at any point in the near future Delta ink a partnership with as tightly with a Middle Eastern airline as we see with United and American, because they were really the main player in the whole spat between the airlines.
Yeah, they were the driving force behind. Yes, spat's a good word. I feel like it's more than a spat, a little bit deeper than a spat.
Yeah.
Is a tiff deeper than a spat? I don't know.
It was stupid. Whatever.
We could go British and call it a row.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, it was stupid, the whole thing. And it seems to have been swept under the rug. They poked fun at each other today. United's CEO and Emirates' CEO were at the event today in Dulles, and they were poking fun at I think they said, Emirates' CEO said, if I were here 3 years ago, you would have been throwing tomatoes at me or something like that. And yeah, maybe. I don't know. But it's just nice to see two very, very large airlines cooperate rather than throw up barriers that really just didn't make any sense.
Yeah. So this goes into play over the coming months. And I think the most interesting question is how useful it is, or how useful it ends up being for passengers. Because, I mean, really, that's the ultimate goal here, right? Is that you've got, I mean, obviously the ultimate goal for the airlines is to make money, but the ultimate goal as far as we're concerned as travelers is how useful it is for passengers. And so I think, I mean, really what you're seeing is United's getting access to India, or secondary markets
well
in India.
Beyond that, the massive Emirates and Fly Dubai route network. It's not just Emirates, it's Fly Dubai as well. That's a massive route network. There's nowhere you can't go with that combination.
True. But I mean, as far as United is concerned, and where the traffic can really come from with that Dubai flight, I mean, I think you're going to see a lot of people transiting on to secondary cities in India that Emirates serves, versus them operating a flight to that city themselves. And then obviously if you're flying Emirates and landing in, say, Chicago or Houston, I mean, that opens up a pretty decent route network. I mean, you're now talking about what? I mean, Dubai Fargo being a
one-stop.
A one-stop. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's truly amazing.
Well, I mean, technically they did have that before. JetBlue was Emirates' partner before they divorced, I guess. And JetBlue, I think they do or did have flights to Fargo, right? So that also, under JetBlue, could have been a one-stop. They did have Fargo flights, right?
Okay. I don't know if JetBlue ever flew to Fargo. Well, Jason frantically looks that up. Let's stick with New York and DC, because this is an interesting one. So Tailwind was slated to start flights this week, right? From New York to DC. This is the seaplane operator that is flying. Well, they're doing New York and Boston and a few other cities, and they were slated to begin service from New York to DC this week. Then they said, oh, wait, we can't do that. They were going to fly to College Park. And then they were told that they can't do that for interesting reasons beyond their control. We'll get to that in a second. And then so they announced that they were going to fly to Dulles.
Yes.
Which is which is nowhere near college. I mean, it's in the same region, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's, as far as things are concerned, it's not the ideal situation.
So there is precisely one person in the world that is excited about this change. And do you know who that might be?
I know exactly who it
It's
is.
me.
It's
I
you.
unfortunately have resumed going down to Dulles a lot. And this option, while I probably wouldn't realistically be able to do it because it's expensive, but maybe just once, flight from the East River to Dulles is quite attractive to me and probably literally nobody else. But also,
So yeah,
in the same week, Delta announced LaGuardia Dulles service 4 times a day. So I'm rolling in options now. It's great.
I love that you went from having just a United CRJ 200 to being able to choose between a seaplane and Delta out of LaGuardia. The airline industry is a marvel of the universe sometimes.
Things change quickly. We went from like maybe up to 4 LaGuardia Dulles flights a day only on United CRJ 200s, up to 13 just out of LaGuardia, plus a couple from Tailwind out off the river. I don't know why there are so many flights on this route, and there shouldn't be, but if there are, I'm probably going to make use of them.
You're spoiled for choice.
For now, I mean, wait 2 months and then
They'll all
something will
go
happen.
away.
They'll all
Yep,
disappear.
exactly.
It's all slot squatting, at least for
Yeah.
United and Delta. So they'll find a new shiny object on another route, and all those flights will disappear soon.
And you'll be stuck with Tailwind, or left with Tailwind.
There are worse options than that.
I mean, that's true. That's true. Okay, so next week, early next week, is the 19th of September. And the 19th of September could be a very interesting day.
A couple of very different things might happen.
A couple of very different things might happen. So it is entirely possible that China will certify the COMAC C919 on the 9th or 19th of the 9th month. That is entirely possible because reports are circulating that it is getting close to certification. There are 2 of the flight test vehicles that have been flown to Beijing. This is the first time that they visited there together. We're, shaking the magic 8 ball of aircraft certification. All signs are pointing to yes.
That's exciting.
I think so. We'll have to obviously wait and see what happens, but we might be talking about this on next week's show.
I hope we are. That's very exciting for China. Might even mean at some point the MAX gets recertified in China. But this has some pretty significant repercussions industry wide to have the first real competitor to Airbus and Boeing. Well, only time will tell if that actually comes to be. I'm assuming Russia is probably very interested in these aircraft as well, after they placed their large order for Russian-made aircraft and said, we'll never order another Airbus or Boeing again. But this is exciting for China.
But I wonder if Russia can order those aircraft because legally speaking, there are enough parts in the C919 from Western aerospace industries that they're probably sanctioned in Russia.
Does China care about that, though?
I think China probably cares about that because they want to continue to receive the parts for their own aircraft.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll have to see if that happens. It's probably why we haven't heard of any such an order just yet. But good for China. Always good to have a new aircraft manufacturer not breaking up, but adding some competition to the duopoly. Whether or not this aircraft will be successful in China or outside of China is anyone's guess at this point. But the track record off the ARJ-21 can't get any worse than that. So there's only room to improve.
Can only go up from here.
Yep.
A month later, on the 19th of October, much closer to our homes, is the vote by Spirit Airlines shareholders to accept or reject the JetBlue proposal. All signs there, again, point to yes. Whether or not that eventually culminates in JetBlue owning Spirit Airlines is still a long way off, but this is another step in the process and another vote along the way. So not expecting any fireworks there, but something to put on your AvGeek calendar.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm distracted. I'm looking out the window and a pair of what looks like Blackhawks are just very slowly cruising over the skies of Brooklyn. Good for them.
All right, then. Good for them.
That's nice.
Let's go to India now, shall we?
Back to India. We already went to India.
Back to India. Okay, we're going back to India. There we go. This time with Air India, they have signed an agreement to take 5 777-200 LRs along with
Ooh,
a
rare
vast
ones.
selection of A320 Neos. So it will be 4 A321 Neos and then 21 A320 Neos arriving in the second half of next year. So those are going to be used on domestic and short haul international routes. And the 5 777-200 LRs will show up by the beginning at the end of this year through March of next year. And so that will be an interesting addition to the Air India fleet for two reasons. One, they used to operate that particular aircraft and got rid of it.
They do
Then,
not have a good history with that particular aircraft either.
then the question becomes, where are they coming from? A lot of the speculation was that they would be coming from the 10 aircraft that Delta retired. That does not appear to be the case, given the fact that those are slated for cargo conversion. And we mentioned Gavin earlier in the show. Gavin Werbeloff, who's our resident numbers expert, who spends, in my estimation, far too much time thinking about these things. But as far as listeners of the podcast might be concerned, not enough, because his insights are often very useful. Looking at what that lease agreement would say about the cargo conversion market, not so great. So it seems that these aircraft will come from Air Canada,
That
which
seems to
is
make
the
a lot more
most
sense.
likely candidate at this point. The announcement has included that they will have premium economy, so this kind of leaves Air Canada being the likely source as they seek to get rid of their 200LR fleet, at least the passenger one. Their incoming 200LR fleet will be cargo. So it remains to be seen what ends up happening with these leases to Air India after Air India is done with them. Do they get converted to cargo? Probably.
Yeah, Delta, most of these aircraft, at least the ERs, are in the middle of conversion to freighter. One of them is actually operated, or was at least operated, by OneWeb, the satellite company, as a flying test bed for satellite connectivity, which is pretty cool. One of them I thought ended up as a private aircraft for a sports team. N866DA is owned by Gridiron Air LCC. I think that one is now a private jet, very fancy. I don't remember who exactly. Was it the Patriots? Was it?
Not. It wasn't the Patriots, because the Patriots have the 2767s.
Right.
I don't know. It's not important.
Somebody. It's white now. It's white. It's owned by an LLC, but some of them will remain in passenger service, but not for
Cardinals.
commercial
It was
service.
the Arizona Cardinals.
Ah, that's it. Right. And they modified the interior, but some of them will end up in non-commercial passenger service, but it's not going to be Air India. Good for them. Their fleet is in dire condition, and that's kind of why they have to go out here and buy some, or lease some aircraft to fill in the gap, because their aircraft, I think we talked about this recently, are kind of falling apart on the inside. But Air India has a troubled history with 777 LRs in the past, where they did have them in their fleet, but they were very new aircraft, and they started cannibalizing them on the ground very early into their lifespan, which is a shame to see. But hopefully they treat these ones better than the last batch.
Well, these will be leased, so who knows?
Well, in that case, I really hope they don't part them out, because they
Yeah.
don't belong to them.
Oh, man. Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. Let's talk about some really interesting things that happened yesterday. So yesterday, a Wizz Air aircraft that had been on the ground in Ukraine since the beginning of the war made it out. That was one of 4 aircraft,
Yeah,
Wizz
there's still
Air
3 more in Kiev.
A320s. Yeah, there are three in Kiev. The one that made it out yesterday was in Lviv, and that was HALWS. The transponder went on as soon as they left Ukrainian airspace and flew into Poland. So that's 1 down, 4 to go. It would be really interesting to see if the other 4 make it out anytime soon. The 3 that are still in Kyiv are HALWY, HALPJ, and HALPM.
Yeah, those other in Kiev.
Set your alerts.
That's a much farther flight to get over to friendly airspace. Those from the aircraft that went out this week just had like a 50, maybe 100-mile flight over to the Polish border. The others in Kiev, the nearest neighboring country is Belarus, and that's not good. You don't want to fly them there because Belarus is complicit with Russia in the whole Ukraine situation. So they would have to fly quite a bit west to get to Polish airspace, and that's probably a bit more risky. So those are probably going to be there for a while.
Yeah, it remains to be seen if and when they'll be flown out.
But hey, one aircraft is better than none. Good for them.
Right. And it also remains to be seen how and what condition those other 3 Wizz Air A320s are, given the fact that they've been much closer to the fighting.
Yeah.
That's another open question. Let's talk about our favorite Scandinavian airline, SAS, which has had its bridge financing approved. We talked about the fact that they were working on wide-body lease returns, 3 A330s and 2 A350s. They're rejecting those leases and sending them back. They had their bridge funding approved at the end of last week, and then at the beginning of this week, they announced that they were trying to work with lessors to reject a few leases for A320neo aircraft so that they could continue to slim down their fleet as they reconfigure everything. So things moving along as far as SAS is concerned. It's a long way from a sure thing that they come out of this on the other side a leaner and stronger airline.
All right. As long as they're still around in December for our flights to Stockholm.
Yes. And they haven't rejected the lease on those aircraft.
Yeah, that would be problematic for us.
Yeah, there you go. I just don't want to end up on a Euro-Atlantic wet lease.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Airbus cut Qatar's final A350s orders. They're gone from the order book now.
What is this, like the 4th time they've incrementally canceled this order?
They're done.
Now it's all gone?
Now it's all gone.
Okay.
All of them are gone. So there are no, for the first time, this would be a fun trivia question that is just coming to me now. And so I don't have the answer off the top of my head. But for the first time in X number of years, there are no Qatar Airways orders with Airbus.
I feel like it's got to be for as long as Qatar has been an airline, right? They've had Airbus aircraft in their fleet for forever.
I don't know what that length of time is, but it's a really, really long time.
I don't know who can answer that question, but
I mean, I could probably look it up when we're done recording.
Yeah, but Qatar has had Airbus aircraft, like every Airbus aircraft. They've had the A380, A350, A340,
and been the launch customer for a lot of them.
321, 320, 319, 310, and A300. There isn't really an Airbus aircraft they have not had.
Well, I guess now whatever comes next really is probably off the table, at least for a while. But until all of this gets resolved, and who knows when this will actually be resolved, no more Airbus aircraft for Qatar.
Back of the line for new aircraft orders, which is a long line right now.
Yeah, especially now if you're an Airbus customer or not yet an Airbus customer. The summer started off not great.
Bad.
At all. Bad is the word I was looking for. As far as passenger ease of use at various airports go, Heathrow was a mess, Schiphol was a mess, variety of airports, Arlanda was a mess, and Stockholm, variety of airports across Europe especially were just an absolute disaster at the beginning of the summer travel season, as the airports didn't have enough staff, as a crush of travelers came through, airlines were operating too many flights for the staff they had. Things had normalized a bit over the last few months, and so by the beginning of September, things were looking up, and then people forgot that the up-tempo of travel was still such that it was compared to how many staff were available. And so now we're starting to see bad things happen again. And this time it's Schiphol yet again is a problem. But Jason, you had some interesting take on basically what happened.
Yeah, I had read, I don't have the source in front of me right now, but basically Schiphol has stopped paying staff like a summer bonus, an incentive to come to work. So workers stopped coming to work. They stopped picking up extra shifts, I guess, or stopped working as many shifts as they were, and it just threw the airport back into chaos. Whoops.
Not enough slack in the system.
No,
not even close.
I mean, if that's all it takes to put the airport back into chaos, that's not great.
No, certainly not great.
Meanwhile, also, we had other issues in Dublin this past week where Aer Lingus' IT fell over for like a day, and it was all disaster there, though that can happen to seemingly any airline anywhere at this point. We'll actually talk about that more in a moment. But Amsterdam in particular just can't catch a break. But also, it comes at an interesting time in September, mid-September now, when things are supposed to be chill. Summer's over. Kids are back in school. Parents are back at work. People are largely done with their summer vacations. But an interesting quote was tweeted out from at the transcript underscore on Twitter. I guess an account that tweets out transcripts from earnings reports. This one in particular from United, that September has been actually really strong. And I'll quote them here. What I would say is we're seeing a really strong September, and it does not appear that summer's come to an end. It's that strong. We look at Mexico, Caribbean, Europe, kids are back in school, but the demand for our product in those places is the same as it was in the summer. It's a premium leisure demand ultimately that's driving this strength. This is new. Before COVID, September was supposed to be a month where you could non-rev wherever you want or get an empty middle seat or lower fares, and it seems the summer season has bled into the fall, and that is a new and very interesting twist, one that I am not happy about because I love traveling in September and October. It's the best time of the year to travel because other people aren't doing it. They've ruined it.
Anecdotally, I can confirm what Patrick Quayle from United is saying. I mean, my flights, except the 7:30 p.m. Saturday evening departure from New York to Chicago, which was healthy but not completely full. All of my other flights were completely full.
It's not supposed to be that way. It's good for the airlines that they are busy, but as a leisure traveler who likes empty flights and available seats and low fares, it's horrible. But it's good for the airlines.
Fair enough. I was surprised my Delta flight from New York to Stockholm. I did not expect that to be completely full.
Especially since it's a route that they only picked up again during the pandemic. They haven't flown that route in years. And that's on top of the other airlines operating that too. We have Finnair flying JFK Arlanda as well. So there's now 4 airlines flying New York-ish to Arlanda, and they're probably all full. It's crazy.
Yeah. So they're looking at these numbers, looking at the revenue reporting from the airlines, and then looking just anecdotally being in the aircraft. Things are still busy. I wonder how much the pandemic's influence on being able to work remotely and being able to school remotely is influencing kind of the bleed through of premium leisure travel. Because if you're looking at premium leisure travel, you're talking about people who probably have white collar jobs and who are probably able to work, or at least partially work, from not at a desk in an office these days. So I guess what I'm wondering out loud for the podcast, and dear listener, if you have any opinions or thoughts on this, please podcast at fr24.com. Is this the new normal? Has the fantastic fare and empty plane of mid-September through mid-October gone away? Or is this just something where we're seeing so many people, there was so much pent-up demand that so many people are like, forget it, I'll take my kids out of school, we'll go, it's not a big deal. Now that we can finally go.
I mean, I would say people put off their summer travel and did it in September, but summer was plenty busy with travelers. So maybe it is really just people traveling when they want, dealing with it.
Yeah.
I say
I don't know.
Stop it.
Okay, we said we were going to talk about another IT issue, and this one isn't the airline's fault. Jason,
it's
you
never the airline's fault. Come on, no airline will ever admit to an IT issue, except if you're BA, you'll break out the high visibility vest. But this case was you could still blame the airline for not having proper redundancy. Same goes for Aer Lingus. Your backup plans are not real backup plans if one issue takes out your primary and backup functions. But in this case, this is really weird. I picked up on this. I had missed this back in January, where apparently WestJet had some major issues in Calgary back in July. So actually like 2 months ago at this point. But the weirdest thing happened. A freight train, I think it was either a Canadian Pacific freight train, derailed outside of Calgary, like 140 kilometers outside of Calgary, and took out two buried fiber optic cables. And that itself ended up taking out ATC functions for Nav Canada in Calgary and also a bulk of WestJet's IT services. And that impacted their flight significantly for like 2 days. And it's just, that's the weirdest thing, that a freight train derailment 100 miles out of town could impact flights.
It's like the beginning of a movie.
Yeah, it was 85 miles outside of Calgary. They canceled a bunch of flights, delayed hundreds. It lasted for 2 days, enough so that WestJet had to make a note in their weekly performance metrics, which I just picked up on is a thing, by the way, that this external factor impacted their flights because of Nav Canada issues, but also their own IT issues. Just the weirdest cobbling together of words that I've seen in a while. I think the exact words were significant operational impact on July 14th and 15th due to Western Canadian train derailment, which led to network-wide IT outage. That's a weird one.
I don't think we'll ever see that again.
I hope not, but there are a lot.
These things happen.
There are more than you would think fiber lines running through railroad right-of-ways. So it could happen again, but just the odds that like there'd be a freight derailment that would be bad enough to take out both fiber optic lines is just strange.
Yeah, that's a new one on me. I want to close the show with something that we've done, I think, once or twice before, but not usual. When I fly, I like to read books. I just like having a book in my hand. And so I wanted to recommend two books that I thoroughly enjoyed on across all of my flights last week. The first was The Apollo Murders by Commander Chris Hadfield, who we're going with a space team. So I promise it's av-geeky enough. Commander Hadfield's book, it's his first novel. It's a historical fiction set in the Apollo space program after the last Apollo, and it takes off from there. And there are murders, and it's an interesting mystery novel, and really well written, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then I finished that, and so I asked for recommendations what to read next. And a few people, first on that list, Matt Cherry, recommended Project Hail Mary, which is Andy Weir's follow-up novel. He wrote The Martian, which is also amazing if you haven't read that.
Even I have read that book, and I don't read books.
And so I picked up Project Hail Mary in the airport on the way out of Stockholm and finished it before I got home.
Wow. Well, you also had like 18 hours at JFK. So.
True. I did, but I was also taking pictures of mismatched radomes while I was at JFK. So that happened too. Project Hail Mary, a very good novel as well from Andy Weir. So The Apollo Murders from Chris Hadfield and Project Hail Mary from Andy Weir. If you're looking for a book to read, listen to, peruse on your e-reader or wherever you find reading in between listening to this fine podcast. This has been episode 181 of AvTalk. If you have enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, please tell us about it and tell other people about it by leaving us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. We truly appreciate it. I appreciate it ever so slightly more than Jason, I promise.
Yep.
I am Ian Petchnik, and I am here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.